Welcome to TechOps Engaged, a webinar series sharing critical information to the AJW workforce on where we are with AJW's strategic plan and other updates in technical operations.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm Matt McNamara, and welcome back to TechOps Engaged. In today's Engaged, we're going to be talking to Mr. Alan Borling. Alan is the NAS Policy and Quality Control Group Manager. And Alan's going to talk to us today about the Centralized Airspace Maintenance Planning and Scheduling Program, more simply known as CAMPS. Alan, welcome.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me.
It's good to see you. Hey, before we get into CAMPS, tell us a little bit more about, I know you play a pretty important role in a strategic plan. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So the TechOps strategic plan was released early last year. And as part of that, we stood up 4 focus areas, and I'm one of the leads for one of those focus areas. So ops management is one of our initiatives. We have 3 under each one of the focus areas. So operations management covers a wide range of topics, but one of the big ones is CAMPS.
Excellent. So with that in mind, tell us a little bit more about CAMPS. What is CAMPS and how do we get here?
Sure. So CAMPS, it's easy in the FA to start talking acronyms, but I'll spell it out as best I can and then try to explain why that moniker came out. So CAMPS stands for Centralized Airspace Maintenance Planning and Scheduling. So a lot of this project ties into the results of our last district realignment a couple of years ago. And as part of that realignment, we went from a focus on, sort of legacy boundaries to one where facilities are aligned with ARTC airspace boundaries and with our air traffic district counterparts. So really, as we look at this CAMPS project and initiative, it's really about analyzing the NAS field maintenance program, all the work that we do out in the field, the way we plan that work to be executed, and then how we respond to outages and, complete that routine work. So, I came from the field. I was a technician and I was an SSC manager. In the field, you're constantly being thrown unplanned, unscheduled events that disrupt our ability to effectively prioritize our work. So CAMPS is in sort of an enhanced way of managing our work through software with centralized process and oversight, and going forward, being able to better plan for our work and execute it with as little distraction and interruptions from unplanned events as possible. So I think the important thing to remember is this isn't because of any sort of a problem or anything. It's really about, we do an amazing job maintaining the NAS right now. It's a way to evolve and sort of mature our NAS maintenance program to that next level. So one thing I wanted to get into is, CAMPS, it's become often synonymous with a workforce dispatching project, but it's really a lot more than that. So right now, planning, scheduling, assignment of anything that an SSC is responsible for is done in-house. So it's done, between the manager, the coordinator, specialists, they talk over and sort of determine that path on a very tactical basis. So our core work, PMs, open corrective maintenance, safety items, you can go on. That is done very locally. We want to mature out of that current, very labor-intensive tactical method of planning our routine work and going to a more corporate approach. So other industries follow this formula. Trained and certified personnel are identified, whether it be, for us, it would be NAS trained personnel. They have EOS credentials, whatnot. They're then dispatched from various locations to support work rather than planning their own work, determining when to do it, where to go, where to dispatch from, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, like you said, that there are other industries that do it this way. It's not just starting from scratch. It's sort of a proven process for folks that do very similar work to what we do.
Yeah, definitely.
How is CAMPS? How is it different from the way that we do maintenance now?
Yeah, so I think I touched on it a little bit, but right now we have a very micro view of maintenance activities in the NAS. We give a lot of sort of just general direction. We give facility assignments out there. The SSC gives general assignments. We have PM windows, and we do our best to meet those PM completions within those windows. There's always pop-ups that interrupt that. A lot of work is put on the managers, especially the SSC coordinators, and a lot on the technicians to figure it out on their own. Figure it out. I know you've got to take leave. I know you've got training to fit in, but here's your maintenance. You better get it done. If an SSC has people out on leave or in training, there's a lot of internal tactical work done just inside the SSC and sometimes with neighboring SSCs to try to assist with maintenance. Often it's an impact to the system users. If you're pulled away for an outage or somebody calls off, outages have to be canceled. Scheduled work needs to be canceled. It causes a big disruption in our process and just being efficient in general. And obviously, it's an impact to the technicians. It's not the best for a work-life balance if you constantly feel that pressure that you've got this window, you need to meet it, you solely need to figure out how to complete that maintenance. So we're trying to go as a more macro view of how we support the NAS within our own artsy individual airspaces. So that more big picture planning, we should be able to use some sort of software solution that looks at qualifications. It identifies, okay, here's the specialists in this location. They're certified or trained on this. They've got current safety training qualifications. They are ready and available to respond to this type of work. Their schedules are known. We know we can dispatch them from a location and then go from there. So looking across the district, it's going to sort of benefit our ability to flex as needed to support employee leave. More thorough training. Right now, training, when you always double down, you lose people, and then you get new hires, you have to train them. It's a very long road to sort of having that workforce flexibility. Detail assignments, things like that. All those little things add up where it's very difficult to support those because you're focused on core work. You alone have to resolve those problems. That's where we're trying to get to this bigger view where we support better our ORM. We use all of our resources available. Have people identified that can certify and maintain facilities and dispatch from other locations and not necessarily have to come into an SSC office to start that process every day.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned ORM. One of the ORM principles is situational awareness, and that seems to relate to even this process here, right? Having a better idea of what's going on around you, what resources are available, what personnel are available, what are they tasked with, all those sort of things. That bigger picture, that micro view, as you called it, to help folks figure out the best way to get the work done.
Yeah, certainly. I think back to personal life experiences where we've had outages, maybe where people are working nearby in equipment rooms right next to each other, and there just wasn't that coordinated effort to tell each other or dispatch together to say, hey, this person's working on the power in this room, and in this room the person's working on fiber optics. So there's some cause for confusion sometimes when things go down. So that's something that hopefully this would address with that more centralized analytics driven approach.
Yeah, it does feel like that would be one of the benefits. As I think about the strategic plan, there's a line in there, there's some information in there. I'll actually quote, I was reading some stuff in there as I was getting ready to do this interview. And Jeff Planty said, there's words in there about increase our agility and flexibility to provide the safest, most efficient service to our users. And it really feels like CAMPS supports that vision of increased agility and flexibility. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's the overall end goal is flexibility, agility, any of those idiot words. So COVID, I think, really demonstrated our ability and our resiliency to maintain the NAS, even though, we reduced maintenance for there, but we were still able to complete those critical maintenance tasks. We were responding from locations that we didn't traditionally respond to. We were doing things out of our normal maintenance program process that we had been doing for the last 60 years. So that really established that sort of, we can change things for the positive and give the workforce and management more flexibility. So, I think like future end state, we want to get the ability to assign and dispatch personnel, from any location. We want to that's a long-term vision. Obviously, there's a lot we have to do to get there, but we want to support those workforce flexibilities. In the initial strategic plan video, if y'all remember from last year, if not, you can go back and rewatch it. Beautiful animation in it. It looks like it's something from an Epcot ride that has talks about the future maintenance program and what technicians going to receive their work assignments on a nice, mobile device, and then they can have their their iced latte and dispatch from there. We want to be able to get to that point where it's not just a burden to look through your RMLS dashboard and look and say, well, I think I can get this done in one day. I'm going to try to schedule an outage today and tomorrow to do it. We're taking that up a level to where we have people talking with each other that can coordinate outages, map things together. It supports the FAA's Flight Plan 21 under our operational excellence pillar. We're trying to make data-driven decisions. Data-driven is the big key there. We put a lot of burden on people to personally have to make decisions constantly. There's always going to be a human element in this. We're not trying to say that you're going to be automated or anything like that, but assistance in planning these things, that's really what this is about. It's providing assistance, letting our highly skilled technical workforce focus on their highly skilled work, touching the NAS, interacting with the NAS, maintaining things, not focus so much on phone calls and logs and determining where they need to go next.
It's interesting you brought up the data-driven part. We hear that in almost everything that we talk about lately. And like you mentioned, the workforce has an incredible set of knowledge, skills, and abilities that they use today to make their decisions about what, when, and how to work. It sounds like this new process, has a link to data that will also add that additional component in there to even help them make even better choices.
Yeah, certainly. I think back to my technician days where maybe somebody shows up at a facility and you have to escort them out to a facility. And, if this had been done in a planned manner, I could have scheduled an outage and done some maintenance while people were there doing a site survey. The things like that, they're just very difficult to do right now because we get a lot of tactical interruptions. I think going forward, the more planning we can do ahead, you're always going to get pop-ups or unscheduled, things that interrupt your life, so to speak. We want to minimize those up front and have that data-driven process up front that allows us to say, no, this can be deferred just because it's out of service. We're using analytics, we're using AI to determine it doesn't meet the criteria for immediate restoration. There's no impact to safety or efficiency.
It's kind of an exciting time, like a lot of the things in the strategic plan. It's certainly an exciting time to be part of this. It's a big change. Like you said, we've been doing maintenance so long in the very same way. This to be able to be part of the maturity of that is pretty neat. So with that in mind, has it been tested anywhere yet? And how will you be looking at implementation?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it seems like it's a new idea, a new concept. It really isn't. It's sort of building upon what we did a couple of years ago during the pandemic. We piloted a few different centralized maintenance efforts in different districts. So I believe Boston, Kansas City, Oakland, they completed their pilots last year, and we learned a lot into what it was successful, what gaps there were. It was really important for a gap analysis to identify, these are our tools right now. It's very labor intensive to try to plan maintenance for everybody. That's something where we need a lot of help in the form of like software tools and maybe some process and personnel changes. Right now, though, for example, in the Washington, D.C. district, they are piloting effectively a dispatching model where they have 3 SSCs, 3 core airports, Washington Dulles, Washington National Reagan, and BWI. And they are sharing essentially 1 SSC is responding to all radar issues across those 3. So they're wrapping up that pilot, I think, in the near future. So we're learning a lot from that. So this CAMPS project is really based on the success of those initial pilots. So, right now it's in the conceptual stages. We are just getting to the point where we're going to be able to fund some of this and go forward and start the whole coordination process to pilot and test out, this prototype, so to speak.
It sounds like one of the things that might be a benefit of this is the idea of better teaming on maintenance type of issues. Now you know what you have your knowledge, skills, and abilities, but do you see this as increasing your accessibility to maybe other folks that have also knowledge about the work that you're doing, or that you can lean on if you need any help or support, that sort of thing?
Yeah, certainly. I think back to as a technician, you can have a ton of responsibility put on you to solely figure out how to maintain a facility, and you're expected a lot from, you go to Oklahoma City, you complete your OJT and your training and get a certification. and then you're blessed. You're typically given a certification and you're expected to maintain that facility. As we start to go to a dispatched environment, I think you're going to see more technical teaming across locations where when you're experiencing a more difficult problem, it isn't on, if you only have 2 or 3 specialists certified in a particular system, it isn't really on just those 1 or 2 people assigned primary and backup responsibility for that facility to figure out every problem with that facility. I think it's going to lead to more information sharing and really help with proficiency, because what we want, one of our big complaints with proficiency is people don't get to touch the equipment enough to really get that in-depth layer of knowledge they want to have. Being able to work on more similar equipment more frequently rather than just having these random site assignments is really going to help build that proficiency and make you more of an expert in those areas, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely knowledge sharing is just so important. I think that's really exciting. Is there a plan to do any more piloting?
Yeah, good question. So right now we're in the, we've gone through the conceptual stages. We're getting some seed funding to do some piloting. So I would expect a pilot effort for at least a standard operating procedure, sort of piloting out, can this function in a district, to happen sometime in early 2023. So we're going through the coordination process with Tech Labor on that, right this week.
Cool. Traditionally, when we've done our maintenance, it's been, calendar based. I look there, it's time to do my monthly, it's time to do my quarterly, it's time to do my weekly, whatever it is. And that was really all I was focused on. It seems like now technicians probably will be assigned not just based on the calendar, but based on the training that they have or their certifications or the impact operations, those sort of things. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of factors that are going to come in. So, right now we have a very periodic driven maintenance schedule. Technicians look at that, look at their dashboard and effectively figure out what they're going to do, when they're going to do it. So, having that automated tool that takes in all those factors, it'll help stack it better so that, you're focusing on PMs up front in the window. Maybe we're deferring corrective maintenance. A lot of our decisions with corrective maintenance are based on feedback from our users, stakeholders, things like that. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but sometimes we make decisions to restore things just for the sake of getting them back up in the air and not really assessing the impact. So I think we have a lot of projects going on simultaneously. They're not just going to augment sort of this central software dispatch process, but also allow us to sort of readjust the maintenance program, make it more predictive, getting away from that periodic element so that we know effectively, rather than having our work upended and an outage happens, maybe a lot of these things we can identify with sensors and data up front will notify, hey, it looks like we're going to have a failure at this radar site, this power supply is starting to drift up. We've tried to do that with mass and whatnot. It's not at that mature stage where we're actually dispatching specialists preventatively to replace parts that are high failure, for example.
I think about, back to my time as a technician a long time ago now, but it felt like, sometimes being a firefighter, there were, times when things were pretty mundane and other times when they got pretty excited because all of a sudden there's an outage and you really had to drop everything and get to it. It seems like this might even make some improvements to that.
Yes, I believe there's a huge focus on, everybody feels that adrenaline when they get an outage and they need to respond to it, but often it's a false start. So they'll respond to something that really didn't need to be responded to immediately. So we're doing a lot of work in the background. We baselined response codes a couple months ago, sort of bringing a more tiered approach to the way we at least respond to outages or sort of benchmark ourselves. There's some big projects going on for service-based restoration. They're piloting that right now in the Boston district to effectively focus on service impacts and service outages rather than specific equipment failing. So I think taking that away, that sort of responsibility to respond immediately to everything, regardless of the response code, getting to more impacts-driven decisions, that's going to make a big difference for specialists. They're not going to feel that pressure. They're going to work on exciting work, but they're not going to have to plan for 2 days worth of maintenance and then have to drop it just because something's happening at a facility that's nearby. Of course, that's going to happen sometimes, but the whole goal of this is to get away from that being an every other day thing.
You mentioned more than just preventative maintenance. You mentioned, several other activities as we were talking. Is there, it sounds like a big lift. How, it sounds like there's an opportunity to manage all the maintenance activities. Can you share a little bit about what's going to be involved with that?
Yeah, I think, some of this is my personal opinion. You cannot, you need to go to a minimum viable product, essentially. I know we're talking about that in terms of software development, but you want to start small and get victories and sort of learn as you go. If this was a turnkey day one, hey, every district you're going to do this and everybody's going to be going everywhere, that's we're setting ourselves up for failure. This is something where you need to have a phased approach. Just software building in general, if we're building in software that's racking and stacking things, logically, we're going to start with periodic maintenance and you're going to add other things as you go. If we tried from day one to turn on every data feed and have a tool decide what we're going to do, that's a guarantee for failure. We're not going that path. This is something where we're going to pilot out just the process of a few of these items, periodic maintenance, open corrective maintenance that hasn't been addressed or is part of an outage, things like that. Start small, learn. The big thing is learn, implement these changes long term, identify the impacts and bargain those changes and go from there.
Excellent. If someone out there in the field has some questions or ideas or they want to get involved, who do they reach out for this initiative?
Yeah, so we're just getting off the ground, but certainly you see my name on here, you can reach out to me. I'm an open book. So we've got several key leaders in tech ops participating in this project. So for example, the executive sponsor, I'm filling in for him today, Richard Morgan, he wasn't able to join today. So for the executives, he is the focal for this. So, sorry he couldn't be here today. I'm second best, but I'm doing my best. So, but as part of the strategic plan initiative team, this ops management initiative is led by Brian McPhillips. He's the NAS operations group manager in NASEO. Keith Patterson is the Indianapolis district manager. He is leading specifically the camps dispatched process and team type development. So he's the focal for that. Michael Hartzog has the integrated technical tool suite, and then Chris Huguenin is leading the mobile technical workforce. So really you can reach out to any of us. Right now we're still in that conceptual stage. We're working on a comm plan. What I think is really key is, being able to communicate this, be transparent as soon as possible, and get the right people involved. So we want people that are energized, ready for, a challenge. So, we'll give you whatever information we can. A lot of it is, we don't have all the answers yet. We're still in that conceptual stage. As we go forward with, any sort of union notification and starting to pilot things, that's where we're going to intake a lot more input and, hopefully get this from a very rough concept to a nice polished product.
Alan, thanks for joining us today. As we're getting ready, we're running a little bit low on time. What would you really like the audience to remember from our discussion today about camps?
I think, this is really a huge opportunity to think differently about how we support the core tech ops mission and we support the NAS. So as I mentioned, I was a tech out in the field, started 20 years ago, and I've been out of the field for over a decade, but I just remember the amount of work involved, coordinating things, picking up work from other employees that maybe went on leave or training, things like that, just that extra burden that's put on people. This is an opportunity to look at things differently, to where we focus our technical workforce on technical work. I think that's the real critical thing to remember here. Focus, their skills on the things they like doing and the things they want to do. So allowing people to focus on that, it allows the managers to focus on their work, coordinators to focus on their work, more align people with truly, skills-based work. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity here. We have leadership on board. You've got leadership that's engaged and is desiring change and is ready for it, and is looking to explore new ideas. So, maybe we have an idea or a concept right now that we're going to throw out in a couple of months and change things and pivot based on impact through these pilots or input from these pilots. That's expected. It's really about trying new things, not introducing risk to the NAS, making things safer and more efficient as best we can.
Alan, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks especially because, as you had mentioned, Richard Morgan was scheduled to be here and he had a last minute conflict that couldn't be avoided. And we really appreciate you stepping in to share your knowledge and information on camp. So thanks so much for that. And for all the rest of you, here's what you can expect on the next Tech Ops Engaged.
Please join us for the next Tech Ops Engaged on Thursday, January 12th at 1 p.m. Eastern for a discussion on spectrum engineering and 5G impact on aviation. Also, visit the AJW Strategic Plan and Tech Ops Engaged websites for more information, past webinars, and more. Thank you for your time. This concludes the webinar.